beautiful granddaughter Claudia hid her deceased grandmother in the refrigerator. Claudia was worried that she would be hungry in the refrigerator, so she thoughtfully put a lot of macaroni inside. She did all this so she could continue to receive her grandmother's insurance money. Claudia runs a famous heart restoration company, but now she's being owed money by her partner. The company is at risk of closing down. Claudia was able to get by on her grandmother's pension, but when she came home this day, she found her grandmother lying peacefully in bed. She wasn't breathing. Suddenly, Claudia felt very sad because if her grandmother left her, Claudia had not only lost her only family, even the company she worked so hard for would end up bankrupt. At that moment, her friend Osana suggested. She said that Claudia could freeze her grandmother's body first. Then Claudia could continue to receive her pension to keep the company running. She could wait until the final payment came in, and then hold a funeral for her grandmother. Claudia thought Osana was crazy to think that way. How could she let her dear grandmother die and not have peace? Claudia sternly rejected this outrageous proposal, but when she got on the phone to the funeral home, she suddenly changed her mind. Claudia left her grandmother in her favorite refrigerator. It seemed like a good idea. Claudia would also be able to look at her face from time to time to ease the pain of missing her. More importantly, Claudia could continue to receive her pension to keep her company running. It was a very good deal, so they went to work. They took everything out of the refrigerator, and then they put grandma in the fridge. They were afraid that her body would be exposed, so they put a lot of steak and macaroni on her. After they were done with that, Claudia also put pictures and candle holders on the fridge. She didn't seem afraid that people wouldn't know that there was someone else in the fridge. The next day, Claudia took the documents to the client to ask for money. However, they beat around the bush again. They implied that if Claudia wanted to speed up the processing of the documents, she had to find something to bribe him first. Claudia, who was penniless, was furious at this shameless behavior and cursed. She refused his request with great justice and determination. But then the armor behind Claudia suddenly moved. It turns out that inside the armor is Simone, the town's tax inspector. He hid in the office so that he could find evidence of this man's crime. Now that he's caught with all the evidence, Simone took him away without saying a word. Claudia was stunned by this scene. If the boss was taken away, then she would never get her money back. So she rushed after him with the paper. She wanted him to sign before he went to jail. However, the boss was held down by Simone, who was beside her. Simone said this is obviously an illegal act. The three of them pushed and pulled in the stairwell and fought. However, when they were not careful, Simone rolled down the stairs and lay still on the floor. The armor in the doorway was shocked and fell on Simone's body. Now they were in trouble. Assaulting a police officers is a big crime, so Claudia had to rush to the hospital. She asked Simone to drop the charges against her. Simone looked at the poor Claudia and couldn't bear it. Without saying a word, he tore up the charge sheet. It's not a bad way to get a smile from a beautiful woman. Simone had fallen in love with Claudia at first sight just before the staircase. This was a request from his heartthrob. How could he not say yes? However, Simone's colleagues outside the house saw that they were chatting happily, so the colleagues tried to set them up as a couple. It turns out that Simone has become a workaholic since his divorce. He asked his colleagues to work overtime with him every day, but the colleagues were already suffering. Now that the opportunity was right in front of them, there was no reason for them not to seize the opportunity. So they put all of Claudia's information in front of Simone. They were even kind enough to point out that Claudia's grandmother's pension seems to be in trouble, so Simone could visit Claudia under the pretext of investigating this matter. This way they would have a chance to spend time together. Simone's face lit up with laughter, so the next day, he dressed up and went to knock on Claudia's door. And Claudia, with a bad conscience, she was about to thaw her grandmother out of the freezer. According to common sense, it takes 2 hours to defrost a 500-gram chicken. It would take at least 15 hours to thaw a 70 kilograms old man. The grandmother just out of the freezer didn't seem to change much. As time passes by, the water dripping from her body kept falling. The three of them thought that when she was completely thawed out, they would announce that she was dead. The farce could then be quietly dealt with. However, none of them expected Simone's sudden visit. They were going to pretend that no one was home. However, the sudden ringing of their cell phones revealed their whereabouts. The three of them had to hastily clean up the scene and send Claudia to go to Simone's house. By the time Simone entered the house, Grandma was already sitting at the table playing cards. Simone wanted to say hello to the elders, but he was pushed upstairs by Claudia. Nervous, Claudia thought Simone had found out something. After all, He's a public and private policeman. He must have found out something to come to her house. But Simone stammered and said, I came to see you because I wanted to ask you out for a shopping trip. Simone was a little shy to ask a girl out for the first time. He was uncomfortable and was looking for a reasonable excuse for this move. But then he turns around and finds Claudia already dressed up. All she wants now is for Simone to get out of here so that her best friends will have time to deal with Grandma's remains. What's unexpected is that what a boring date the two of them had. Simone spent the whole time talking about the tax code from the first to the last. Claudia downseat off with all the tax knowledge, but she had to keep up with Simone. They met someone selling flowers on the road. Simone seemed to have a sudden enlightenment. He immediately paid for the flowers and gave them to Claudia. Only the next moment, he asked the vendor for an invoice. Simone's behavior really made Claudia look stunned, but the scramble between the people will spread to the third person. Claudia is on the phone with a cut on her face. She asks her friends about her grandmother's thaw. However, her friend had a temporary commitment, so she put her grandmother back in the freezer. After listening to the call, Claudia looked helpless. She turns around and finds Simone talking to the dog again. Although they didn't seem to have a very good conversation, the date ended when the dog chased them. Claudia managed to get home, only to find that the power was out. Just when Claudia wants to get a candle, Simone opened the refrigerator with a flashlight. He was worried that the food in the refrigerator would spoil because of the power outage. Claudia was so frightened that she rushed straight to him. She was afraid that Simone would find the frowning grandmother hidden in the refrigerator in the next moment. To divert his attention, Claudia kissed Simone right away. They kissed and came to bed. But as they were about to take the next step, the lights suddenly came on. To her surprise, Simone, the gentleman, also chose to get up and leave the bed. So he saw the fear in Claudia's eyes. Because Claudia had a boyfriend who was a cop, so she was living in fear. She was told by her friends to give up before Simone found out about it. She hasn't figured out what to do about Simone yet. On the other hand, a friend of her grandmother's is also calling her because she can't get in touch with her. This girl is trying to get a date with an old man. She purposely hid her young face. Claudia dressed up as her deceased grandmother. In this way, she hopes to cheat Unzionario because Unzionario was a friend of her grandmother's. He came from far away to see her, but he was repeatedly fooled by Claudia. Unzionario claimed on this day that he had been in ambush in the neighborhood for 3 days, but he hadn't been able to meet Claudia's grandmother. He warned Claudia that if she didn't show up again, he would call the police and have them search the area. Then Claudia couldn't come up with any of the excuses she had prepared. She had no choice but to pretend to be her grandmother. Claudia welcomed Unzionario to the door. As soon as Unzionario enters, he starts to talk about his love. Claudia could only keep her head down for fear of being exposed. Unzionario's aggressive attitude made Claudia retreat again and again. Finally, Claudia coaxed him out of the room. Claudia thought she had solved her big problem, but she didn't have time to catch her breath. Simone found her again. Claudia didn't dare to be sloppy. She had to bring her tools to avoid eye contact with him. The careless Simone thought she was Claudia's grandmother, so he speaks directly of his love for Claudia. He kept on explaining that he wanted to have a good life with Claudia. Claudia was moved to tears by these words. She really didn't expect Simone to be such a love interest. She immediately rushed upstairs to remove her makeup and transformed herself back into Claudia's face. Then she grabbed Simone's collar and kissed him without saying a word. That's how they confirmed their relationship. Soon Claudia became pregnant. She knew that Simone had a clear sense of public and private affairs, even though they were getting along very well now. But if Simone found out, Claudia hid her grandmother in the fridge, so she could continue to receive her pension. He will break up with her and then arrest her. So Claudia's first priority is to bury her grandmother after she's thawed out. So she loaded her grandmother into the car while Simone was busy at work. Claudia plans to transport her to a friend's house for thawing. However, they were halfway to Simone's house when he was on duty. All vehicles must open their doors and be inspected. Claudia's car was no exception, but when she opened the door, there was nothing inside but a puddle of water. Claudia and her friends were stunned. It turns out that just a few minutes ago, a friend had sent Grandma away again with a sudden emergency brake. She made it all the way through unimpeded until she was stopped by a tree branch, and then she stopped in the forest. In the end, Claudia had to tell Simone the whole story, but Simone had already noticed something: the water dripping from Grandma's body, the unplugged hairdryer. He thought of Claudia's horror when she saw the refrigerator. He already knew that her grandmother had been hidden in the refrigerator. Once again, Simone was torn between reason and emotion. But this time, he chose to side with Claudia. To avoid more trouble, their first priority was to get her grandmother back. After searching for her, the two friends finally found her in the woods. They finally found Grandma in the woods. Grandma was finally back in the bed she knew so well. I thought this was the end of the story, but Claudia's debts were not recovered in time, and now she has a child to feed. They couldn't live on Simone's meager salary, so they decided to hide Grandma in the fridge again. Although the plot is a bit ridiculous, but the film also indirectly exposes the dark side of society under the guise of dark humor. But this is not a good way to do it. You can subscribe and leave comments if you have any ideas. Thanks for watching. See you next time.